welcome to the stage, Cathy Vartuli.
I walked in the undergrad study room, and there she was. She was sitting there with her feet up on the desk, her hands behind her head, laughing at someone's joke. My gaydar went off. I love Jodie Foster, and she has the same kind of quirky humor, so I'm going to call her Jodie. I was a first-year grad student, and I was going to have a lot of classes with the seniors in the undergrad department, so I was trying to figure out how to meet them and figure out my way around. I was also a brand new lesbian. The year before, in a drunken haze, I'd made out with this woman, and I really liked it. And that, to me, meant I must be a lesbian. I'd spent the next 9 months or so trying to figure this out and deal with my own internalized homophobia, my fear of maybe hurting people, scaring them, or harming them in some way. So I felt very awkward, and I'm naturally a shy and awkward person anyway. So I was really glad to see someone in the department that I felt like I could resonate with. And I really wanted to get to know her, and I was in luck. Tuesday morning when I showed up for class, there she was. We had an hour and a half of quantum mechanics together, and an hour and a half of electromagnetism, EM. It was a pretty dense morning. And the first break we had, I went over to the vending machine. I was putting my 50 cents in, and I put H3 for Suzy Q. And for those of you that don't know what these are, they're these delectable Hostess treats. They're kind of a plastic chocolate cake, 2 pieces. And they're smushed together with this chemical sugar frosting. For poor grad students, they're a great way to get through class. So as I'm pushing H3 and the Suzy Q comes down, Jodie leans over on the vending machine and is like, good choice for the discerning student, and proceeds to get one herself. And so we bonded over Suzy Q's. It worked out really well for the first class, nice sugar high, but for EM, we would both have horrible sugar crashes. So we had to spend a lot of time together figuring out each other's notes and studying together. And we spent a lot of time together. We'd go to labs and study for tests. And people got used to seeing us together. She's very cool, leather jacket, very popular, me with my backpack. And I was developing quite a nice crush on her. That Friday, though, my hopes were dashed. As she was packing up her bags that Friday, I said, hey, what you doing this weekend? Anything fun? And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. My boyfriend's coming into town. We've been together 4 years. I was like, oh, yeah, have a good time. And to myself, I'm like, I've got to get my gaydar recalibrated. But there was actually kind of a relief because I felt like Jodie was way out of my league, and I was really shy. I was afraid to connect, and so it was like almost a relief that I didn't have to risk all this to get to know her. There was no hope. So I was going to be friends. I was going to be a good friend. And so the next week I said, hey, Jodie, are you busy on Sunday? Would you like to come over for dinner? And she said, yeah, that'd be great. And I said, well, there's something I have to tell you, because I didn't want her to come over under false pretenses. And I was turning really red and stuttering, and she's like, what is it? I said, well, you should know I'm a lesbian. And she's like, does that affect dinner? No, it doesn't. She's like, great, I'll see you Sunday. And I was really relieved because that was the first person in the department I'd come out to. Like, I was the first engineer that I'd told. So I wanted to make a good impression on Sunday, and I spent all day cooking my grandmother's famous lasagna homemade from scratch sauce and salad. And I have to admit, the crush was coming back a little bit, so I wanted to impress her. She showed up at 6 o'clock, and I found out that she ate 5 foods and lasagna wasn't one of them. So I was like, oh. But to be nice, she tried it, and she actually liked it. And we had a really good time. We were hanging out and talking. We were playing with my cat. And after a little while, she said, hey, can I see the rest of your place? I'm like, sure. I was a grad student. I was really small. I took her around, and we ended up in my bedroom. And this is 1992, so people weren't really out, if that helps. And we also had waterbeds at that time. And this is one of those weird ones with no baffles, so like when you sat on it, there were all kinds of waves. And she had never seen one before. So she was sitting on the bed, bouncing up and down, making waves, having fun. And on the bed was one of my old teddy bears. And she picked it up, and she was making it talk like the professor. When you have lost the pi sign, you must look back through your notes and find it. And then she was reaching out, and she kind of bopped me on the nose with the teddy bear. And you have to understand, I was so shy. I grew up, I didn't have a lot of friends who were girls. And I didn't know what friends who were girls did. So I was like, oh, wow, this is what friends who are girls do. This is so nice. Like, she's inviting me into her world. So after a little while, she put the bear down, and I picked it up and made it talk like the professor. And I bopped her on the nose, because this is what girls who are friends do, right? So we ended up starting to wrestle with the bear, and we ended up flopped over on our sides with the bear between us, just laying there talking, kind of riding some waves. And I wanted to keep reminding my brain that she was straight, because I had the fear of leading someone astray, and I didn't want to corrupt her. So, but as we were laying there on the waterbed, I'm going to call it a rogue wave, because I don't know what happened. But all of a sudden, we were kissing. And I'd never kissed a woman when I was sober before. And I was like, wow. Her lips were so soft. And I could feel her breath on my cheek and her hair on the side of my face. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And wait, no, she's straight. What is happening? Like, you're doing a bad thing to this poor person. And then our hands were kind of exploring over our shirts, very tentatively, not sure what the other person would do. And then our shirts were coming off. And I could feel her pulse under my fingertips and the sheen on her skin as she was breathing faster. And her skin was so incredibly tender. And then she put her mouth down on my nipple, and I think my brain melted. I hadn't ever felt anything like that before. And part of my brain was still saying, wait, guys, no, she's straight, you need to stop this. But we kept going. And our hips were finding each other and riding and finding this rhythm on the waterbed. And it was so hot. And then we took our pants off. And then I stopped worrying about her being straight, because I had never gone down on a woman before. And I was really like, what if I'm disgusted? What if I can't do this well? Like, what if I throw up on her? I just didn't, I didn't know what to do, so I was not feeling that turned on at that moment. I'm like, Jody, there's something I need to tell you. And she's like, yeah? I don't think she wanted me to stop what we were doing. It's like, I've never gone down on a woman, I don't know if I'm any good at it. And she's like, yeah, well, I think you should try it. So I gathered my courage, and I crawled between her legs, and I was kissing around the outside, because again, I wasn't sure if this was going to be horrible or not. And her skin was like silk, and the contrast with her pubic hair coursed against my lips. It was, my brain was doing all kinds of interesting things. And I slowly worked my way towards her center as her hips were moving under my mouth. And I was afraid she'd smell bad, but it felt like an aphrodisiac. She smelled so good. And I finally got my courage up. And I slid my tongue between her lips. And it just, the wetness and the way her hips were moving and the noises she was making were just amazing. And I slid 2 fingers inside her, and she was so wet. And her muscles were tightening around my fingers, and her hips were moving, and I was like, why don't we do this all the time? And not long after that, she came really hard against my mouth, and I just moaned into her in pleasure. I was like, wow. And she's like, yeah, now it's my turn. And she pushed me back down on the bed. And all my fears came back up. I had a fear of my body, like I didn't know if it was going to be horrible to her, because she's straight. And she kind of pushed me back, and I was like, oh no, what if she doesn't like this? But somehow she took to it like a duck to water. And she went down on me, and it just the most delicious feelings. I was so amazed and wondered. I came really hard. And she crawled up, and we were laying there on the bed, again, riding the waves that were left over. And somehow the bear had ended up between us, again. And we just lay there grinning at each other like we discovered Christmas. And we just stayed there for a while, and then it was Sunday night, so we had classes early the next morning. She said, I really have to go. And I was like, yeah, I understand. So we got dressed, and I walked her to the door, and she kissed me goodbye. And the minute the door was closed, all my fears came back. I was like, this is my friend, the only person I've come out to in the department, and what did I just do with this? It's like, I have another 2 years here. This is going to be horrible. And I remembered all my fears about when I came out. Like, I'd really struggled. I hadn't had a lot of, 1992, people weren't talking about this. It wasn't something that was out there. So I was really afraid of what was going to happen. And I didn't sleep very much the rest of the night. I actually got to class a little bit early, or we got to school a little early, because I wanted to make sure, figure out what was going to happen before all the other students were around. And I went to the undergrad study room where we always met, where we always hung out. And I took a deep breath, and I looked in, and there was no one there. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, all my worst fears, I felt like I'd corrupted her. It would be 20 years before I'd figure out that maybe it was a mutual thing. And I was like heartbroken. I didn't know what to do. It was my first real experience with someone, and I was so touched, and I didn't want to harm anyone. So I took a deep breath, and I walked around the corner to my office. I was just, I'll have to get through this somehow. And there she was, sitting at my desk, her feet on the table, hands behind her head. It's like, hey, Cathy, you want to go grab a Suzy Q before class?